What is up? Welcome back to the SuperCoach Experience podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Savage, the coach of the Xavier Turbos. Round 3, the biggest trading week of the year. This is where you generate your cash, baby. I'm joined by the coach of the Pretenders, Grant McCartan. I'm just laughing in this intro because this is the third time I've done it, so you've done well to stick by me here.
Yeah, I mean, third time, that's it, mate. There's no more chances. I think you've done a pretty good job there. You actually got me a bit hyped with that little baby there, so I like it.
Little baby?
You just said.
Oh, I said little baby.
No, you just said it's the biggest trading week of the year, baby.
You got to come with the energy. If you don't come with the energy, no one will be excited to listen. If you come in just thinking, yeah, I'm ranked 39,000th. Welcome to the episode, guys. No, it is the biggest trading week of the year. And as I said in our previous intro that we went to record, you look back on this week every year and you actually look at the players that you got in. They're very insignificant to your side by the end of the year. Like these players that you're getting in, don't overthink them. It's all about cash generation this week.
Yep, that's why I see it. I've seen this week. I've seen a few too many trades where people are looking for points. I know there's some really, really good guys out there at the moment. I think you should be looking at worst for a combination of cash gen and points, but really your priority has to be cash gen. Like you don't get this many weeks in the year where you can make this much money.
There is a popular option. We'll talk about it very shortly, but a cheapie has been dropped and there are many other options. There isn't going to be many weeks of the year where all the options that are relative suitors are going to be at their third game before their price rise. So I think that's why it's a very good week to be swapping and making these changes. But I do want to pull you back up on the cash gen versus like points and stuff. I actually don't mind the people going for the points this week. If you're happy with your team, like you don't need to be getting in players if you don't think they're absolute must-haves. Like if you've already got the likes of Jesse Arthurs, if you've already got Tamale, like I think you can go with trying to attack this week. But I also think don't try and be cute. I think it's a good week to have cash generation and make moves in the next coming weeks in regards to points.
I think that's the point, right? Like in a vacuum, yeah, I would agree with you that's the case. But I think this year, it's most years, but this year more than ever, with some of the teams that have played had a bye in the first 3 weeks, I think next week might be just as big a trading week. Like I think you need to look at this, have a real plan over the next 2 weeks as to how you're going to fit probably 6 guys into your side, because we'll touch on it in a segment a little bit later on, but there's some real cash gen options this week, but there's some real cash gen options coming up next week as well. Plus guns, teams with really good draws starting to turn. So I'm not against the guns this week, but you just got to juggle how you're going to have the cash for some options next week.
Yeah, I went early on a cash gen option last week, just knowing that this week would be huge, and I'm glad I did so because that one gun was Jesse Arthurs. So, nice. And I played him as well. So, yep. Pat on the back. But
was that the only good thing you did last week with your field team?
I didn't do many other good things, to be honest. So yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Actually had not a bad week. Went up to 39K from 67. So obviously a not great week can still gain you a lot of rankings. So it is still very tight. I'm looking at like a lot of the top people in the top 5,000. I'm only 250 off. So there's nothing in it. If you are ranked 39K like myself, there's still room to move in the coming weeks. Just make sure, just don't mess it up.
Yeah, well, I mean, last year was one of my weaker years in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, and I was still in the late 40,000s after the 4th round, and then I finished in just outside 3,000. So it took a really late run to get there, and it was really hard to catch up last year. But I mean, if you've already made a 30,000 spot jump, who's to say you can't do it again next week, and then you're in the top 10K?
Exactly. So keep training that way. And I think it doesn't feel like it's a moving week in the coming weeks. Like I quite haven't picked up the trend on teams yet. I did want to have a chat about that. How do you think the game is traveling at the moment? We obviously know the Cowboys, Parramatta look to have leaked points, but there's always a couple that go under the radar. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think with the structure of how teams have come out this year, it's almost like they sense an opportunity that Penrith aren't, like are beatable, a bit more beatable than they've been in recent years. Every year they've lost a player or two important players, and you know, teams like the Broncos, they've got a real reason with a new coach to come out hot. The Storm seem hell-bent on revenge for that grand final loss. The Sharks haven't made it all the way to the peak yet. Like there's some really good stories from those top-end teams. But it's, I mean, week 1 to week 2, we saw a whole bunch of rank outsiders win. And it just goes to show, like I've been saying all preseason, it's a pretty even comp. Like in prior years, and I don't want to step on any specific teams, but, you know, at times the Tigers, the Dogs, the Sharks before them, they had years where they were like, they only won 2 or 3 games and they were very, very beatable most weeks with big scores. There doesn't seem to be that team this year. I know the Cows are struggling. I know the Dolphins are struggling, but I still think, like, you look at them on paper and they're a good enough side to put up a fight, I think. So the way I see it going at the moment is lots of teams want to attack. Lots of teams don't seem that interested in defending at the moment. There's a lot of it's the craziest start I've seen from a point scoring perspective, which is great for super coaches.
It is very good. I think the bounce backs on the weekend really reaffirmed our kind of gut feel for round 1. Like round 1 is meant to be that low scoring one, but there were half the teams wanted to make a statement. The other teams just wanted to play round 1 footy. It kind of flipped in the second week, where the second week is like, okay, the people that made a statement is like, okay, now let's build into the season.
Yep.
Whereas the other teams were back on revenge. So I'm still yet to determine what the sample size is and how to kind of go about that. So I am reserving my judgment a little bit. I'm still a bit wary on easier matchups like the Cowboys, like the Dolphins. And I'm looking at teams like the Tigers and the Knights, where on paper they kind of look like an easier matchup. They've let through the least amount of points of any side. So I think, you know, I look at that Titans matchup against the Knights this week at Seabus. It looks juicy, but the Knights have defended well, and they have defended well for a few years now. So I think you've got to just pick up on these little things that are happening that are going just under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the ladder, don't just look at position or look at who's won games. Like, go and have a look at where teams have scored tries, how they've scored tries, and how many points they're scoring versus giving up, those sorts of things. And you can start to see some trends appearing pretty quickly, I think. I would say one thing to watch out for, and this is SuperCoach specific from what we're talking about, is when the scoring across the board goes up, there's an equation that is behind how they price players, and that's driven by what we call the magic number. The magic number varies week to week according to how the whole competition scores. That number will basically, what it means is if the magic number goes a certain direction, it's harder to attain a BE, and if it goes the other direction, it's easier. So you might have a 60 average one season, a player average 60, and their price would be higher than the next season because the overall point scoring is lower. Or, you know, it basically depends on how many points the whole comp is scoring. And what that means is when in this year so far, with lots of people scoring really well, it actually drives break-evens a little bit higher than they normally would be for a player averaging the same. So it's really good for all the guys that have huge negative BEs at the moment, but what you'll probably start to see is less and less of that if everyone keeps scoring this way.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good way to look at it. And I've always struggled with comprehending that. I think recently, like, it makes a lot more sense. But to me, in the past, I was like, hang on a minute. If they hit this number, then this is what they're going to rise in price. And it's never like that. It just depends on round by round it changes.
That's exactly right. And that magic number will always change because they have to factor in, like in 2021, the magic number was crazy high because everyone was scoring heaps of points. They couldn't just have people, like, otherwise Tommy would have been, 1.8 mil or something like that crazy. They couldn't have that.
Yep.
So they have to drive up the price, which makes it harder for other players to attain their break evens and makes it harder for us to generate cash across our team. So you just got to be aware of that. It's actually one of the reasons generating cash is so important this year early is because it seems like it's going to be a high scoring year. Maybe not 2021 high, but high enough. And that means you need to get in while you can make cash before that magic number climbs and climbs.
Yeah, good point there. And there's a lot of options this week.
Yeah.
We will go through them. What we're going to go through, our top 10 cash generation options for the year. We're also got a new segment, which is SuperCoach Spotlight, which will be, we pretty much put our spotlight on one game and we look at it from a different perspective. And you came up with it today, and we've implemented it, so let's run with it.
Let's see how it goes.
So TLT round 3, we're going to go over the major talking points. Penrith versus Melbourne. Edwards out. Laurie is in. Schneider is on the bench. I heard he was going to come in for Cole. And Isaiah Papali'i is back. Warriors versus the Roosters. Spencer Lenu and Lindsay Collins are back. White keeps the front row spot with Lindsay Collins staying on the bench, which is interesting. Sul Wong is starting on the edge, and Victor Radley is back. For the Broncos versus Cowboys, the Gods is named, but Pierre Cora was spotted playing in the starting side today. We did talk about that a couple of weeks ago.
In the preseason.
Yeah, it could be.
It just seems that to me, like, look, Gods may, and they may just change it before the game. They may swap to Pierre Cora starting, but you know, he's got to get first team reps if he's going to play fairly substantial minutes. Yes. And he did play substantial minutes on the weekend. So it could be a minute split. It could be just Goz in early to take the sting out of the game and then let Pierre Cura loose. Who knows? But the point is, if you've got him in your team, he's got a negative break even. He's not really going to lose your cash at the moment. So it's not an issue.
Robert Derby is on the wing for Braden Burns, which is another cheapie option. Tom Duffy, the number one cheapie option of this week, the number one talking point, he's dropped for Jake Clifford. Tamalolo's back. Nano is back on the bench. The Sharks versus the Rabbitohs. Tallis Duncan is named. Hubner is suspended, so his cash gen just halts a little bit. Jack Whiten is back, and Jamie Humphries is named at halfback. Dolphins versus the Tigers. Fini Fuiaki is on the extended. Oren Keeley keeps his spot, and the rest remains relatively the same. Supercoach-wise, not really much interest there. Titans versus the Knights. Tony Francis is on the wing. Khan Piera is out for 4 to 5 weeks, it looks. Fafita remains on the bench. Frizzell into 2RF. Elliott at lock. Can't? No, he can. He's in. He's on the bench. Eagles versus Bulldogs. Sam Rani looked really good last week. Keeps his spot on the wing. Hawkins is in for Volkman. Unlucky for the people who started with Volkman there. Katonga keeps his bench spot. Cheaper to watch out for. Bailey Hayward is in for Matt Burton at number 6. Satili Tupanua, number 1 traded in player last week, is on the edge. And then the last game, Sea Eagles versus Raiders. Tom Trebojevic and DCE named. Takiaho is back. Xavier Savage is back. Tamale keeps his spot. Hopewada is named in the centres for New South Wales Cup, and Matty Nicholson on the edge. There's a lot to dissect here, Grant, but what do you think is the biggest talking point that come out of these team lists?
I think the biggest talking point, I mean, everyone was hoping that Tamale would get named. I think that's a really big one. Look, I've only just digesting some of this myself. There's a number of what I would say this week is keep a careful eye on some of the extended benches. I think we all know that Tommy's got to be 50-50 at best, and risking him with a hamstring in round 3, that seems interesting. But yeah, watch the extended benches. There's a number of guys. The Broncos have Katoni Staggs. The Dolphins have Fine Fuiaki and Bostock, both named on their extended. Addo Carr at the Eels. Like, just be careful when you're looking at your cheapies, what sort of job security you think they have. I don't think we'll have time to go into detail on each one specifically, but as you said, we're going to go through a segment later on our top 10 cash gen, and we can probably touch on a few of them then anyway.
I think we'll go through enough in the cash gen options. There are cheapies, whether they're good or not. We're not talking about them. They're probably not good. But yeah, Tamale keeps his spot. For me, he looks really good, and the Raiders are playing really good at the moment, so I'm pretty happy to put him in there.
Yep.
And it seems Canberra Raiders winger always fights for that position with Hopewada at the start of the season, and that person always wins.
Well, I think Schiller would have won it last year if he didn't sign mid-season with the Knights, right? Like, he seemed like he was actually going pretty well for them. He would have had, he would have been a good chance of a spot in that side if he stayed, I think.
He did win it, didn't he? Like, eventually.
Well, eventually, but what I mean is, at the time when he signed, that he got left out for quite a while.
Yeah, that's fair.
The other thing that I want to touch on, you touched on in the preview of potential sides to attack this week. How good is that Knights left edge in attack? Like, you could own any of them at the moment. I know they've got the bye next week, and that's got to be super challenging for everyone. Like, where do you sit at the moment on, if you were looking at a Knight as a buy option this week, what would you do knowing that they've got the buy in round 4?
Well, I don't have Greg Marju, and he's someone who looks really good. Like, he hasn't even got many major attacking stats, but he just looks so good when he was running the ball. Newcastle actually look really good. Fletcher Sharp at number 6. I think Fletcher Sharp would have been a more popular option this week, but for me, I really like Greg Marju, but I'm staying away from him because I've already started with Dylan Lucas. A lot of people have missed out on Dylan Lucas. A lot of people have Kalen Ponga, so they'll be in that boat, but I don't want to have 3 nice players. I'm happy to wait a week, pay a bit more for Greg Marju if I have to.
Yep. No, I think that's good. I think it's an interesting one this week because, I mean, it's really hard. Like, I started with 2 Titans, for example, and that bore fruit for me this week. Okay, Brimson didn't go amazingly, but Tino did. And, you know, I guess the value of missing a player for 1 week, as long as you can cover them, I'm not against it at all. Like, if people, I guess to my point would be, if you're looking at Knights this week, I don't begrudge anyone at all. I'm not saying that they're the best option, but if you don't have any other fires to put out, I think that left side, it's as hot as there is as can be. Ponga looks so good in that hybrid sort of half fullback role where him and Sharp interchange out the back. It's classy, very classy.
100% agree. Tom Trbojevic named, obviously under an injury cloud. We talked about it before. My gut feel was it was a hammy twinge and they just didn't risk him at the game. I understand why they would rest him this week, but my gut feel was that he played. I looked at New South Wales Cup team list for the Manly Sea Eagles. Clayton Falalo isn't named for New South Wales Cup, but he is on the extended for Manly. So that is very worrying. What are your plans with Tom Trbojevic? He plays the last game of the week as well, which is very concerning. Yeah,
so what I would think is captain's run will be Saturday. We should know around the captain's run or the 24-hour cuts. So I've actually got, I'm an Iongi owner. If you've got a Bulldog or an Eel or anyone in that last game, what I would just be cautious of doing this year is this week is maybe don't play your best 18. Maybe save and potentially save one of your reserves in there to swap with Tommy if he's out. Your other option is you just take the risk of you don't do a VC loop this week at all on the basis that if Tommy's out late and you don't have you just cop an AE, and if it doesn't come into your 18 or your 17, or it doesn't really matter to you. Like, that's an option because this year we're allowed to do that. You can actually run a guy that you aren't 100% certain is going to play late in the weekend and just cop your AE, but you lose your VC loop for that. So I guess these are the different things you got to consider this year. It's very, very different than prior years. I would never have done that in the previous year. But one thing I won't be doing at the moment is selling him, because if he's named this week, even if they leave him out, that says to me that he's got to play. Like, one thing they usually do with Tommy is when he's out, he's out. They usually don't name him, so it must be very minor and it must be close.
Well, it was a twinge. If it was anything more, then he wouldn't have got named for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, it's just his history says to me that you got to be cautious, but I also don't begrudge anyone selling him. The Seagulls actually have after the Para game, have quite a difficult draw.
Yep.
There's a lot of fullbacks about to turn into a good draw. Reece Walsh, for example, is a good one. But I'm not selling him this week because I don't have to. I've got a pretty strong 18. I don't have any Dragons. I've got a pretty good side, I think, this week. I could stomach not playing him.
Yep. 100%. Tom Duffy is dropped for the Cowboys, and I think he was already the most sold player before this news came out. I think there was no news to come out to say whether he was going to get dropped or not, but I think everybody had a feeling that it was going to happen. He is dropped. Jake Clifford in. Possible options. We've got Jamie Humphries at number 7, but I actually sit on the side of the fence that I like moving Sandon up to halfback and going a Pete Mamazelos or a Tom Starling, which is what I'm doing this week. Tom Starling, negative 59 break even. Mamazelos, negative 39 break even. The bunny straw in the next 2 weeks, Sharks and Penrith. An attacking player like Jamie Humphries is going to rely on attacking stats, which he has in his first 2 weeks. He's not going to get them as easily against these other sides. I know you say Penrith have leaked more than 20 points in the last 2 weeks, which is very valid. But the Sharks aren't an easy beat either. And Jamie Humphries doesn't have the big break even that these other two guys have. So I'd be looking at moving Sandon up to halfback, getting into Tom Starling, who I'm way more confident to play. Tom Starling's draw is a bit better, and I'd be way more comfortable playing him. Pete Mamazelos plays for the same team, but we know can just sit there and tackle all day and get 50 points just in tackles. So I think you're better off going that route. And the fact that Mamazelos, Sandon Smith, and Tom Starling all have massive negative break-evens. I think Mamazelos negative 35, Starling negative 59, and Sandon negative 51. That's your ticket to Nico or Cleary if you don't have either of those guys. And I think that's got to be the priority, thinking cash generation for one of these guns, because it hasn't hurt us yet, but it's going to hurt us very soon.
Yeah, that's completely valid. It's one of my trade options. I've got 2 guaranteed locked in trades, and then I've got 2 that I can only take one, and I'll have to make a decision on. But Tom Starling for me is he's always a hell of a footballer whenever he plays. Like, okay, he's never going to be the greatest defender at his size, but he puts his body in front of big guys. He makes his tackles. He does, like, he tries real hard. He might always be better in a less than 80-minute role, but right now he's playing for a contract. He's got, they've just signed Brayley. He's not going to take the foot off the accelerator. He's going to go hell for leather. And I think he's a great SuperCoach option. I actually agree. The other thing that is worth considering is the news that Latrell Mitchell is probably back by round 5. That's what they're targeting now. There's no way Latrell gives up the kicking to Jamie. And nothing against Jamie. He's not exactly like it's not like he's a sharpshooter, but Latrell just loves being in the game. He wants to do everything he can. The only reason that it might take a week or so for him to come back is if they give that that the injury affects his kicking, or the potential to re-injure is a little bit higher. We've seen Nico Hines forego kicking and Cleary at times just for a week or two because they can play their normal game but not the kicking. It's a very specific movement. But yeah, I just, without the kicking, I don't see that same flaw that Humphries had before. Though he does have a really good base power for a half. I wouldn't be against it, but I'm in Tom Starling's corner at this point.
Yeah, he does. He's not like a Tom Duffy or a Isaiah Katoa last year where his base is really low. He's making 25 to 30 tackles a game, which obviously over the next 2 weeks they're playing better sides. He'll get that. So I don't hate it to the core, but if you've already got Starling and Humphries, you probably got. No one probably has Starling and Humphries with Sandon as well.
Yeah, so. I don't think all of them. But again, like, and I didn't touch on Mamzoulos much. That's just because I already have him. But I think he's a really good option too. Like, you in those spots, what you're trying to do realistically is get to whichever one of Hines and Cleary you didn't start with. Most people would be in that boat, and get to Harry Grant. And if you can get to those guys as quickly as possible, you take 2 huge issues out of your equation. You don't have to even think about those positions until Origin. I can see Starling making like over 200K. Like he's going to play big minutes. They're going to bring Paddy on slowly. It looks like, even though he's a super talent. I think I'm very keen on Tom Starling.
His style of play is very good for SuperCoach as well. We did in the preseason an analysis. Every time he started and played over 60 minutes, he averaged like 65 or something like that. So I think it's a no-brainer that I go Tom Starling. I guess if you go Jamie Humphries, who I think he is on one of the most traded in this week. I'm not sure whereabouts. I'll double check that. But if you go that, you're relying solely on his cash generation to get up to a Hines or a Cleary, whichever one you don't have. So I like it that the fact that you can rely on Sandon, Mamazoulos, and Starling. If you want to pull the trigger on Hines or Cleary, it's purely based on 3 people, not one person. Yep. So that's what I like about it most. Payne Haas is one of the most traded in this week. I guess this just goes back to the cash versus generation kind of thing. He is going to make cash for a gun. He is at a nice price of 669, 99 points on the weekend, played 50 minutes, which is a lot better.
56,
sorry,
I think.
56.
Yeah.
He played 50 minutes a week before. I can't get him in, but I really don't hate this play at all.
Yeah, see, I have looked at my future trades, and we'll touch on those sort of the plan, our plans later in the show, I'm sure. But I can get him in. I would have to forego Starling, which means I'd have to sit on Duffy for a week and then make a call I don't love it, and that's that. It's not necessarily always who you buy; it's who you lose, and like what changes there. Would I prefer to have Seyfarth and Starling versus Haas and Duffy? That's the battle that I've got at the moment, and I've got to make a decision on that. Everyone would make their own decision. Haas himself, I don't see it being sustainable what he's doing right now. I don't. I looked today. I did some stats for shout out the Gibberers chat. Actually.
Oh yeah.
I did some stats for that chat, and I've got them for the mighty canoe crew. Effectively, no front rower has averaged over 80 since 2014. Since they changed, which was before they changed the rules on offloads and runs. All runs used to be 2 points. All offloads were 4 points. There's been a few people get close. Tino, IPAP twice in the late 70s, but
He was playing second row also.
yeah, that's what I mean, and available in front row. So look, I can see. Look, it could, if anyone could do it, it's Haas. He looks like a beast. He looks like a man possessed with the way Madge is using him smartly. I just would temper expectations back towards that 80 mark rather than the 100 that he's dishing out in base power at the moment. Like, I think he's more his ceiling might be 85, which is huge from where he is. It's a 17-point improvement or something. Or
well, yeah, that's still
like
150k
exactly
off where he is.
Which is why I'm looking at him so much. Not only that, he's one of my favourite players alongside A-Ray, but I just you can't have everyone. And do I think he's a must this week? No, I don't. I don't think he's a must, but he's a good buy.
I also think like Terrell May and Corey Horsburgh are doing such a good job. I think he's a better buy than if you're like, for me, I probably should have prioritised getting Payne Haas over Olakau'atu last week. I could have done that, but I've made my bed there.
Well, the week of extra data makes it look like hindsight's a wonderful thing, right?
100%.
I think last week there was, after watching Ola and Haas play week one, there was nothing in it, and one of them plays 80 minutes in a side that looked shit hot in game one.
Yep.
So, that's easy to say now, but I don't think. And next week we'll be looking back at the decisions we make this week, going like, whichever way I go, I may be looking back going, I should have taken Starling because Duffy's completely gone off the face of the earth, or whatever it is,
I think looking at cash gen, Haas's break even is 9. It looks like he's set to make, with a score of 80, he makes 60k, which could be likely. Could get a bit more than that. But with Starling, it's very different. He makes over 100k and can make a lot more in the following weeks. Whereas Haas, you take a 60k hit for a lot more upside in cash generation. But that's a direct correlation, cash versus points right there.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example. It's actually, we talked about it pre-show. That's really the example that I would use is I'm tossing up between, and Starling's not pure cash gen either. Like, he's very, like you said, very playable. But I just, I don't really sweat decisions too much, as you know, but I think this one's going to be a frustrating one for me.
Yeah, I'm not super stressed about it because there's no way I can get Haas in this week. So I actually think Tino's the bigger one, who he's severely underpriced for what he performed on the weekend. Happy to watch him another week, but I will be watching behind the sofa, behind the couch.
Well, I'll be watching from right in front of the couch because I've got him, I said, and I was big on him all preseason. I had to wait that first week, but he's pretty much almost paid me back really in 1 week, I would say. I think he's nearly a must. If you're not getting, that's the thing for people to consider. If you skip Haas this week and you have to skip Haas, you've got a pretty good consolation prize next week at a cheaper price. The only thing last thing on Payne Haas is if he really is this 85 average guy now, or at least let's call it till Origin, he could get up to that 800k mark and be quite unaffordable for people very shortly. So this week or next week, if you like in your case, you really can't get him, you probably can still get him for 730, 740, and he might still be well priced for that. But you got to make that call soon.
Yeah, 100%. Plays the Cowboys. It could easily go over for attacking stat this week. But it could go the other way.
Their middles look pretty good, didn't they?
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Tamalolo's back this week. Come on, baby. Attack the edges. Tino was a massive one for me on the weekend that I was pretty devastated about. Got 55 minutes. I expected a little bit less, to be honest. But that's a risk you take, and a lot of people took that risk. So hats off to you. Hello? Sorry, I wasn't seeing the waves in the in the audio recording.
On Tino, he probably did play a little longer than they normally would because they threw him back on right at the end of the game with not less than 10 minutes to go. They used their last sub on him to try and chase the game, which I think if it wasn't a close game either way, they would have left him off. And that would have left him at about that 48 minutes mark, which I reckon is what you thought he was going to be playing at.
Yep.
So
100%. All right, we're going to do our SuperCoach Spotlight segment, which is pretty much spotlighting the SuperCoach game of the week. So what I've done is I've looked at the most traded in, the most traded out, and the top percentage of captains, I think it was. Captains?
We're nutting out the equation that we want to use moving forward, but we've basically started with what we think, or what you think is the most, actually, really what you guys, the punters, think is the most relevant SC game this week, most players.
Yeah, pretty much the most traded in and traded out is the main formula we go off, and the most traded in, a lot of Broncos, most traded out, a lot of Cowboys. So we're looking at that game, and we're looking in particular at the Cowboys try concession and how they've conceded all their tries. So versus the Sharks, they conceded 2 tries to the left centre, 1 try to the left wing, 1 try to the left edge back rower, 2 tries to the right wing, 1 try to the right edge back rower, 1 try to the left edge back rower, 1 try to the right edge back rower, 1 try. Oh, Jesus Christ. I've really messed this up.
That's okay.
So the total tries conceded, what I've got out of this is the Cowboys in their 2 games, they've conceded 2 to the left centre, 3 to the right wing, 2 to the right edge back rower, and 2 to the left edge back rower. So it seems the edges are getting a lot of love against the Cowboys, which I really like. And breaking it down to a SuperCoach standpoint, 95.5 is the average of fullbacks versus the Cowboys, which is very, very juicy for someone like Reece Walsh, and I'm very happy to be owning him this week after a horrendous 9 points on the weekend. Will Kennedy got his highest score on the weekend, 78, since round 21 in 2023. So that's just how bad they're doing at the moment, which is a good sign for Broncos fullback Reece Walsh owners. And for the centre wings, we've got Shibasaki. We've also got Jesse Arthurs, who's the most traded in player this week. They concede to their left side 68.25 average. They actually concede more points on their right side. Yep. So that's more conducive to Selwyn Cobbo and also Dean Mariner. So that they've conceded 108, 86, 53, and 112 to the two right edges. Their left side, 19, 66, 111, and 77. The 19 was cooler.
Yep.
He's not really a SuperCoach option at centre.
Yeah, I mean, he has random explosion games. Like he's not someone that we would regularly, outside of when he played fullback for that very, very short stretch. He's not someone we're really looking at. So it's hard to factor that in. I mean, what I look at from the way that the Broncos have attacked that, they've just blitzed the Roosters down the left, and then Arthur's got a hat trick last week on that left wing. They've brought in Darby this week. The Cows. Will he play right or left?
He'll play right because Tuolangi's on the left.
That's the Broncos left side attacking. I do think Cobbo. Look, I think that both wingers will probably score again. If that's what what we're looking at. The Broncos' shape at the moment is they attack the middle early. They attack the left edge quite early in their sets. They finish on their right when the left doesn't work. But they've been blitzing teams like third and fourth tackle. They've been beating them through that left edge. Sort of right on the numbers is where Ben Hunt has just been killing people in attack. He was pretty poor defensively last weekend, but he has that in his game. He was awesome on this last weekend and the weekend before. Walsh was awful on the weekend against Raiders. I think, that's a guy you don't want to have a reason to come out and play his best footy. He was probably even pretty quiet in game 1. He scored 90, but he scored them in a 50-point shellacking. Like most fullbacks would have scored 90 in that game. I don't think he's found his peak form yet, but I wouldn't want to be a Cowboys fan this weekend. I really think the Broncos will put points on. It could be points both ways, but yeah, I would heavily suggest that it'll be Cobbo and Mariner, and then the left side will probably score a few tries as well. I think there's so many points in that game.
Just one question. We said we haven't quite picked up the trends and everything. And like all these other teams that were back against the wall really came out and fired last week against sides that they were expected to lose against. Has it just taken the Cowboys a bit longer? Like, is there a chance they do come back and show a performance, or is it just the timing of it with the Broncos losing last week? Like, is it just inevitable that the Broncos just put points on them?
Yeah, I don't think it's inevitable by any stretch, but the Cowboys would have to, like, Todd Payton seemed lost for words in his press conference after the game. A bit, it's been him and Christian Wolf's been pretty quiet. It's been him and Jason Riles who seem the most skittish about their team's defence right now. They don't really know how to solve it. That's what it looks like to me. I think it's less about the Cowboys necessarily though, and more about the Broncos. They prove that they're a fast team. They're going to score points. The Raiders played an exceptional game against them, and they weren't that far away, the Broncos, outside of Reece Walsh. So if you got Payne Haas playing that sort of pushing out onto the edge in the middle of his stints and running hard, I just don't see how they stop them. I really don't. It's so to answer your question, I don't think it's a Cowboys problem per se, although it partly is. I just think the Broncos will come out. Their middles are going to come out fired up. They got run over by a Raiders side without Tapane.
Yeah, 100% agree. Halfbacks against the Cowboys. 130 and 86 at 108 average. A-Ray at them this week, -5 break even. Maybe is this the direct stepping stone to a Nico Hines or Nathan Cleary if you don't have it? Like, would you be spending $300K on a play like A-Ray? In another week with this break even and these matchups coming up, yeah, I would. But this week, I just think there's too many other cash gen options. If I had less fires to put out, I would consider it for sure. But maybe I shouldn't be the one who's allowed to have opinions on A-Ray because I think he's a gun. And if you're saying no and you're the biggest fan, probably it's probably a no, right?
Yeah, I think he's. I think he can score lots of points against them this weekend, but I still don't think he's a buy.
Yep. Right edge back rolls 80.5 average and left edge 62. I guess the edge back rolls for the Broncos are probably not relevant. Maybe Goz early on, left edge, back rolls average 62, so there is opportunity there. But
Ricky's actually started really hot this year.
He has.
His base power's been unreal. He's playing. I haven't seen him play this well in a long while. He's always been a good defender, but he's running hard. I just think the Broncos will get it too. It's nothing that those back rowers are doing or not doing. It's just that they like to play out the back with pace, so those guys are just more decoys than anything.
66 and 69 for Jordan Ricky. That is nuts. That's gone so under the radar. I know eye test wise he's looked a lot better. Break even of 14. He's 470K, so he's probably at an awkward price.
Yep.
But yeah, it's very, very tough to go someone like him at the price. Anything you want to add to this? So like Reece Walsh, we expect to bounce back from?
Yep, big time. That doesn't mean it'll be a huge score because he generally, for some weird reason, even though he seems like the type of guy who, like Pappy, who can just go massive, he doesn't seem to have that huge ceiling. But I think he's going to go pretty well. I see it. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go 90 plus.
Yep, 100%. All right, let's go over the top 10 players with the lowest break-evens. The top 10 cash gen options. So we've ranked our top 10 cash gen options. When I was doing my own list, for me, it looked very similar to the break-evens list at certain points, but I've thrown a few curly ones in there because I think there are some players in there that probably the break-evens are deceiving.
How are we going to play this? Are you going to go through your list and I'll do mine, or are we going one for one, or what do you want to do?
Let's go number one each, and then we'll just go number by number. Yeah. So my number one is Jesse Arthurs, 341,000 with a break even of -82.
Yep. He's also my number one. I have done this under the assumption that pretty much everyone owns Toya, Sandon and Haas. Those three specifically. I know Sandon maybe not, but we can still talk about them.
I have put them in my list.
That's fine. I don't mind. I think that then you talk to them. I've just done that under the assumption that most people probably aren't buying it.
That's fair though.
But I do have Arthurs. I did the numbers today. If he averages just 60 over the next 3 weeks, he'll be 520K.
Yeah, nice.
and for him to average 60 over the next, they've got Cowboys and then I believe they have the Dolphins.
Dolphins, yeah, at home.
I think he could nearly score that 180 in the next two. Like, if the Broncos keep attacking like they are, he could have scored another 2 or 3 tries in these 2 weeks already. Like, it's just, I've never seen anything like it outside of what the Knights are doing on their left edge at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess for Arthurs, he's never really been this type of player, but we saw it in the All-Stars as well, like even in its side where Ben Hunt wasn't. So I think he's actually just himself. He's gone to another level. He's probably responded by Madge really well. Only scored 5 tries last year. He's already scored 4 this year.
Yeah.
So
and 2 try assists as well.
Yeah,
crazy.
Which is crazy. He only had 3 try assists last year. So he's already on track to have a better season than he did last year. The thing, why I've got him number 1, very playable in the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's exactly the same reason I put him in there. And I wrote, draw looks unreal, playable, and the only downside I could find about him is his base power is low, but sometimes you just don't need base power. I remember the year that when Turbo was going absolutely ballistic, everyone had Saab and his base power would be like 14 and he'd score 135.
Yep.
Like, there's times when you just get a player who's in the right spot at the right time and you just let him play. If you're uncomfortable with their base power, don't play him and let him whatever score he gets can be on your bench. That's fine, but make sure you've got him.
The cash gen is enough for there. It's very similar to Alex Johnston in years past. Get him on the run and like he's got the break even, he's got the run.
Good call.
So one thing I just want to do before we move on, I've had a lot of questions about people selling 500k, 600k guys.
Yep.
At what point do you not, if that's your only avenue to it, are you doing it? So like RTS is a massive one that I've said yes to a lot.
Yep.
I think RTS to Jesse Arthurs is, I'd 100% do it. Gerald Skelton.
Yeah, I probably would because you haven't bought Skelton as a keeper. He's scored in both weeks. He's averaging 60, early 60s or 65. But he's had to score both weeks to do that. Like, I don't see him scoring every week in that Tiger side. Though he looks really good and his base power is still pretty good, he's not going to get out of range if you need to pick him up in 3 or 4 weeks. Like, he might start to show that he will average 65 this year and he might only be 550k in a few weeks. Like, I probably would.
Campbell Graham?
Am doing that this week. Yep. So, yes. That's an easy one, though, Campbell Graham.
I agree. And Jackson Purdue?
Yeah, I'd do that. I'd do that for sure. Yep.
All right. My number 2 is Robert Toyer, mainly because I just think Jesse Arthurs probably is more playable, but Robert Toyer isn't far behind him. I'm playing Robert Toyer this week and 43 last week in no attacking stats. Pretty happy with that. -70 break even, 198,000.
Yeah, I'm going to play both. I would actually play Toyer above Arthurs, but that's my style versus, we've talked about this before. My style is a little bit more safety. Yours is, if I think a guy's going to score 2 tries in that spot, I'm picking him. And I do think he will. I'm actually going to play both.
So am I.
Yep.
I'll tell you what it is with him, though. Like, for some reason, just mentally, playing a 340k guy is a lot less worrying than a 198k guy.
Yeah. So if I saw, let's say, Toyo got 40, what did he get, 43 on the weekend? Yep. All base power pretty much. Well, I think it was all base power. And the weekend before he got high 40s in base power again. If he hadn't have got the attacking stats I saw in week 1 when they got absolutely destroyed, I wouldn't have even thought about playing him because I would have been like, okay, he's got a great floor, a bit like Iro last year where he's safe, but I saw a guy who actually has attack in him. Like, he nearly scored twice last week as well in his 40 and got 43 again. Like, the Warriors, they looked a lot better, and I think they'll be tough to score against. But yeah, I think he's a really good player. I'm really playing him more over Tamale.
Yes, I agree. I'm playing both of them over Tamale.
Yeah.
Number 3. Who's your number 2?
Number 2 for me is Tamale.
Yes, my number 3 is Tamale.
So we can talk about him now anyway.
Yep.
So for me, it's pretty simple. Price, tick. Base power, tick. Has scored in both games and playing in a very in-form side. He's been named. He's clearly won the spot. 232k. What else do you have to do? Like, that's a easy one for me.
Yep. I don't need to add much there. Who's your number 3?
Number 3 is Tom Starling. We've talked about him a lot. Probably won't go too much into it. The only thing that I have added is, I think I said it earlier, I honestly believe that he's a 200k plus cash gen option. Like, don't see Owen Paddy getting enough minutes in the next, let's call it 4 to 5 weeks to, you know, unless they've blown a team out, and he might get he might get a 40 odd where he doesn't seem to jag an attacking stat, but I just see him averaging 55 plus, and that's a 550k player, give or take, and he's priced at 340. Like, I think that's his floor.
I'll tell you what, even when starting, it's probably an option you can hold on to as well. That's gone underrated. I know Mikey went with 2 cheap hookers to end the year last year, and Tom Starling was his number one. He was flying at that point when, he made that decision.
I looked at the numbers today. It's like 70. He averaged 74 minutes a game in that time, and he scored 62 points a game. So and that Raiders side wasn't going as well as they're traveling right now. That, you know, the Raiders play really well when they play a power game through the middle and offload. It's not always sustainable. It takes it out of you. How long they can do it for each year, well, that's Sticky's job to keep them fit. But with Haas back, it takes a lot of heat off the rest of the pack, because he just goes and goes and goes, and those extra minutes. You know, last year it was Smithies, who's a bit more one-dimensional. Haas he was good on the weekend. His footwork, offloading, he looks really good. So, Starling playing behind them at the moment is a go for me.
100% agree. My number 4 is Sandon. My number 5 is Starling as well. Who's your number 4?
Number 4 is Payne Haas.
Payne Haas.
Yeah. So we've already talked him to death, so I won't go into it. I just think that cash gen and points, I've got him and Starling so close, because I think Payne Haas will make 150k. I really do. I think he's going to be priced over 800k in the next 5-6 weeks, and that at least until Origin. We know historically over Origin he does, as any human being does, have a rest. He's also doing in Ramadan at the moment, and he's doing that in this heat. Like, it's been hot, and that bloke is just he's machine.
I can't go 2 hours without eating sometimes and feeling shitty. And
he's playing full NRL, like, you know, 55 minutes of NRL in the heat. Like, him and Terrell May, they're just different beasts. And Tino now coming back. But that's, for me, I actually have him in my cash gen section because he fits that category. Like,
well, he does.
His break even's 9. He's 670k. I think he'll be an 800k plus player. So, yeah, I've got him in there.
Generating cash isn't only chasing the negative break evens. It is buying someone who's undervalued, and he's very undervalued. You're going to get him. You're going to get someone at an 80 about average for a 65 price. So I think that's a fair person to put in your number. Was that 4?
4, yeah.
Oh Jesus, I'm so far.
That's okay. You didn't take out Toya and Sandon and Haas, and I think and to be honest, Toya, Sandon, and Haas would be in my top 3 or 4 sort of area, because I think they're just as much musts as the Tamales and Arthurs and that sort of thing. It's just, I think everyone's got them.
Are you up to 5?
I'm up to 5, yeah.
Yeah, and who's that for you?
I've got Jason Saab there, and this is my first super short-term one, because I think Arthur's run might go a little longer than Saab.
Yep.
Even without Tommy, I think, like, he's just the type of guy who, if you've got a whole bunch of these, you know, you said earlier, some people already have Arthurs and Tamale and Toya, Sandon, Haas, might already have Starling, might already have Haas. Like, if you've got 6 or 7 of those guys, Saab's the type of guy who could take you to Toto or someone like that in 2 weeks easily. Like, he's in the mid 500s, huge negative break even. I just think he could easily jump up. But he's the first one that I've probably put above where I would really have them as a cash gen. I think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how you stagger your cash gen. You can't have every single player sort of about to run out at the same time.
Yes.
You can only make 2 or 3 trades a week. You can only make 3 trades 5 times in the year, and then you've got your origin rounds where you can make additionals. But in this first 10 weeks, you can only make a certain number of trades each week. You actually have to consider when you might be selling guys just as much as how much money they're going to make. The money's great and the dollar figure's great, but if you've got to sell 4 of them at the same time and you have to hold off a week and they lose 40 grand, you know, you're shooting yourself in the foot a bit to an extent.
I really love short-term plays anytime during the year. It's a massive hit for cash straight away. Jason Saab has a really good draw over the next 2 weeks. So he's got Canberra at home, though. Has Parramatta at home next week as well. So if you can get 2 hits of 100K, and get a bulk amount of points as well, you're happy to let go of him as well.
Yep.
Because he's the type of player that
can fall, like can quite quickly have a 20 in his score. Yeah.
And I think at this rate, like when do we sell half of these guys? Like we're probably going to wait 3 or 4 weeks for a lot of these guys. Saab, you're happy to get rid of him too when he has Melbourne. He has Melbourne and Penrith in the following week. So I actually don't mind that at all. Number six.
Yep.
I've got Gehamat Shibasaki.
We're back on track. I've got him as well. Yeah, no, look, it was tough for me with him and Saab. I assume most or a lot own him. I just assumed it wasn't everyone. I think he's really in a really good spot, that left centre role.
Yeah.
He's in exactly what we said about Arthurs. He's probably not going to get the same amount of opportunities, but he's in a good spot.
He's in a good spot. He's very playable this week. I am playing Robert Toyer over him just because I can't bring myself to play Gehamat and Jesse Arthurs in the same side. I think Ben Hunt loves the cutout ball. The centre usually misses out a little bit, but I think he's a nice thing to have over the next 2 weeks. But probably for me, when he does max out with that break even, he's probably someone who will be sold more short term rather than long term as well. Just because I think the Broncos have started hot and he's scored well enough. And so I'll ride him over the next 2-3 weeks and then sell him after that. Number 7. Number 7, Pete Mamzelos.
Okay, yeah, no, good call. I actually don't have him in my 10.
Don't you?
No, I don't.
Who have you got?
This is where I started to think maybe I should chuck in some, not keep following the break-even sort of thing. I've got Mamzelos. I think you can pair him almost with Starling. I'd put him maybe, like I'd buy Starling first if I had neither this week. But I think that Mamzelos is that good that you could put him up with Starling.
Yeah.
So I've got Humphreys. So we both got bunnies there at least.
He's not in my top 10.
Yep.
Humphreys.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think his is a positional decision. I don't think there's that many specific half-back cheapy options. And I've done that with number 8 as well in a second, who we'll get to.
Number 8 for me is Corey Horsburgh.
Yep. I'd have him higher up in my...
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Again, part of that is the assumption that he's probably well-owned and most people are going to have him, right?
Yep, for sure.
I've gone Chanel there, and again, it's the positional thing. I think he's a great cash gen option at 6, and it's for a specific reason. Again, it's a short term. It's because if you've got Metcalf, if you go him and Metcalf and Harris Tavita, you've only got to have them for 2 weeks because they've got to buy in round 5, and one of them can go to a certain Melbourne Storm 5/8, who I think will be just about to take off from that point when their draw is starting to turn. So that's the way I'm looking at it. It's just a positional thing there.
Yep. I think Tyron Wishart is in for a good year as well.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Number 9, I've got Lockie Hubner. I think just because he's suspended for 2 weeks, that probably puts him out of that conversation. But still, I think he's a nice little option in 2 weeks.
Yeah, nice. If you don't own him, just get like in 2 weeks. That's the week when we actually need cheapies to start appearing like him. Looking at the team list this week, if Robert Darby sticks and finds his way over the line, or if he's got decent base power, like he could be the type of guy who. In that round 5, like you need cheapies every sort of week or two coming up to their third game. So if you don't own Hubner, you've actually it's actually better for you now because you can just sit and get him at the perfect time, whereas you would have had to try and sneak him in this week. So that's a good one. I've got Iongi there. Now he's slid down the rankings because fullback. I actually don't think anyone who currently doesn't own him really wants him this week.
No.
Yep.
And I think my plan was always to go Ponga to Iongi this week. There's no chance I'm doing that.
No, but you can do it next week without it being without him rising insanely.
That's true, but I think at the same time, Ponga's absolutely killing it.
Absolutely.
Yep. And Iongi, it's going to be a big mission for people to get Iongi to a gun.
No, look, that's the great thing that the thing that I'm really happy with is that's the theory, because I think people are still working out how to use the flex position. And I think the way to get Iongi to a gun is actually to get Iongi to a gun fullback over 2 weeks. I don't think you get Iongi straight to a gun. I think you will go Iongi to flex, buy someone in flex for a week, move that the next week, sell them into their actual position, and use someone in that position to flex into a fullback. That's how I would do that.
I don't hate that at all.
Yeah, that's how I would do it. But I still think, I do think people, I think he's a 55 average guy.
Yes.
I think that he will make 250K. You're right. That's not enough to get to a gun fullback.
Yep.
I just think that he still is that guy. Like he actually was pretty good on the weekend. He
was good.
He's actually impressed me how defensively solid he is. Like he's made a lot of sort of goal line efforts and tackles. He's no Gutho or anyone like that, but he's made a lot. Like he has impressed me as a footballer. He hasn't impressed me yet as a super coach option, but he's impressed me as a footballer. And I think Riles will stick with him.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what the real problem was going into the season, was how close was Joash Papali'i and those things.
Iong's been one of the players who have actually had a crack.
Yeah, so. I think so. But yeah, look, I could understand why. Like if I was a triple fullback gun owner, I would have Iongi about 30th in my list now because he would have fallen way out. But as an owner, I'm actually kind of glad that it means that he's not necessarily a pod, but it means that I feel like I've got cash gen there that other people won't get. And that's they're going to have to make that up in one of these other positions.
Yeah, 100%. Number 10, I've got Greg Marju.
So do I. I thought that was a sneaky one. Yeah, we're back on track.
Yep.
Yeah, what do you think?
I just think he looked way better than his price.
Yep.
I think 50 average is what he's at, in -5 break even. I think he's going to surpass that. And if you started with him, I think you've got a good thing going, and I'd be happy to plug him in there for the rest of the season as long as he doesn't look disinterested. The minute there's a 2-game stretch where he looks like he's not having that hard run back,
I
think you're happy to sell, but I think cash gem wise, number 10.
Good call. Look, we already talked about the Knights left side, so I don't want to retouch on that. But the thing for me is I haven't seen him offload like he's offloading right now.
He's offloading every time he runs a ball.
They have a very clear tactic to use him where they used to use him as a battering ram on the second tackle. And this is not just the Knights. There's a few teams around the league starting to do this. They want their winger or their first carrier to take a risk on that initial hit up and offload where they can. It's not every set, but 3-4 times a game, because it gives you, it's really hard that first 20 metres out of yardage, especially if you get kicked into a pocket in that inside that sort of, they call it like the box inside your sort of 10 metre mark and inside the numbers where you tuck it on the corner. If you can get an offload, generally that's the start. Now teams are going to start planning for that, but he looks unreal doing that, and he just looks, as you said, interested, and that's the real thing for me. His base power on the weekend was his highest since 2023 when he was just blitzing everyone. So very impressive. For
guys like him and Payne Haas, it's not sustainable, but if they're looking for that, it's definitely achievable to do a lot more than what they're doing at the moment.
Well, if you're an analytics person, it isn't sustainable. There's no possible way these guys can do it. It's never been done before like that sort of thing. But what you got to think about is, okay, well, what is a sustainable level between what we know they've done previously or what they were doing last year and what they're doing now? Because I think if you look at, as I said, we'll use Payne Haas because I know the numbers. His base power is like in the mid-90s the first 2 games. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. But
if you say, well, maybe he could do 80% of that, that's 70, high 70s in base power alone. If he scores a try every 3rd, 4th, 5th week or gets a try, he's already got a try. So like when he does those things, he averages 80. So you got to work out what you think is a sustainable number. 60%, 70%, 80%, whatever of what they're doing. But something is sustainable in there, and that is if their teams are playing well and their effort's there, they'll keep scoring pretty well anyway.
Yeah, 100%. All right, that rounds out the top 10 cash gen options.
I was just going to say, I've just popped in a few names and I just want to do this as a bonus, and you guys will cover most of these next week. But these are some bonus names for people to start preparing, like I was talking about, their trade plans for next week. And I'll go one by one, and you can tell me whether you like them or not. So I've got so this is mainly the teams who've already had a bye or are having a bye this week. So I've got Tuipulotu and Gutherson from the Dragons. I think keep an eye on those. I've got Howarth, Munster, and Pappy from the Storm. Keep an eye on them. Nicholson. Nicholson.
Yep.
Keep an eye.
330K.
Yeah, 330K. Great downgrade option.
And
Tino and Hamish Stewart.
There are some good buys next week, aren't there?
And that's why I touched on it at the start of the show, and I want to reiterate it. This has to be a 2-week plan. You have to, if you think that Haas is a must this week, be very, very careful that you don't hamstring yourself and lose out on some of these guys next week or the week after or however you plan it. Just be careful how you're spending. Really plan like what cash you've got in the bank and how you're going to allocate that, who you're going to have to sell to get some of these guys.
Great. No show next week because Grant was greedy and wanted to put his 2 cents in before next week. But no, I think these guys are massive watchers. Matty Nicholson is one who looks really good, 2 tries. Did have pretty low base power, but he only played 60 minutes. And low base power, that's 36, like 30, 36. So not too bad.
6'7" base power he was. And if you look at what we would consider like the really good 2 RFs, their base power is about 0.75. Lucas's, Preston's, and the guys above them. So
not too bad.
Not too bad. If he might get 80 now.
Yeah, exactly. Hosking is out for a while, so I had a lot of questions about Hosking. Definitely a sell.
Yep, good call.
The injury. All right. This show is brought to you by Carl McGrath. Carl McGrath sponsored the show this year. Was the sponsor of the Champions last year. He's an accountant. You're in finance, Grant.
I am.
Accounting and tax returns are the bane of your existence, aren't they?
Well, I spend a lot of time looking at them for businesses, yeah.
Carl can maximize your tax return the most legal way possible. He is a small business owner, so he can pass the savings on to you. $110 for a basic tax return, but he'll sort you out for price if there's anything more complicated. Head over to Carl's Facebook page or give him a call on 0401 044 839. He's a SuperCoach, so he'll talk your ear off about SuperCoach, and he's based in Queensland, so you can either see him in person or mainly over Zoom. I actually don't mind doing it over Zoom because I hate driving to the place to do my tax return, but obviously that's coming up, so if you don't really have an account that you go to for your tax return, keep Carl in mind. He's a good lad. Let's go to our trades for this week.
Yep.
What are they?
I've got as I said, I've got a pretty simple 2, and that is Campbell Graham and Purdue are out, and Arthurs and Tamale will come in. I can't see a world where I don't do either of those 2 trades. I don't have to sell Purdue.
Yep.
But I don't want to miss either of those 2 guys this week. They're in my top 3 for a reason in my cash gen. Well, actually, they're my top 2, so it's pretty simple for me. Third trade, I'm just going to sweat that choice between, so it'll be Seyfarth to Haas or Duffy to Starling. Now, one of them clearly makes more sense from a cash perspective, but the question for me is how I said Payne Haas isn't a must, but I can do my other trades that I want next week pretty easily by my calculations, even if I get Haas. And that's where I was kind of hoping I couldn't do that. And then I had to get Starling, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, they're good trades, but obviously, like really, really having to balance your squad I get the frustration because I'm in the same boat. At the moment, I'm currently I put in the Patreon chat yesterday. We opened our admin only chat, which is all our wrap ups and all that sort of stuff. So if you're not part of the Patreon, head over there. It is in the bio, the link. But my trades are, who are they? The Kobe Hetherington to Tamale via Dylan Lucas. So Dylan Lucas will shift up. I am doing Tom Duffy to Tom Starling via Jules. And then I needed a bit of cash to generate the third trade. I've done Dylan Brown to Adam Dewey at the moment, which I don't feel great about. I'm not loving the look of Dylan Brown and just Parramatta in general. I feel like if Dylan Brown was in a decent side, I know he would come out of this because he's a great player, but I don't know if I can trust the Parramatta Eels. And I just feel like I'm going a bit sideways by doing this. So I'm going to try and find another way to do it. But also, if I hold on to Dylan Brown all year and he doesn't perform, that's going to hurt me a lot. So if I can generate a bit of cash now, it allows me to go to Jack Williams, who dear to my heart. I really want to keep him in my side, but he's my ticket to Tino.
Yep.
So I think that's a no-brainer for me next week. And I'll probably do Royce Hunt to Stewart next week.
Yep.
Maybe that can generate my trade this week for Tom Starling to go to Duffy potentially. Yep. So, I don't know. There's a lot of different avenues I can go, but I've got to tinker with it. If you are in the Patreon, I'll let you know as soon as I'm logged in.
I don't mind the Brown to Dewey move. I think it makes sense with Dewey retaining the kicking. That's what was really needed. I think we talked about in the preseason. I think he's going to be at least with kicking a mid-50s average guy. That means there's over 100K to be made. That's always a good thing. I guess your other option is, do you want to make a play at that Harris Tavita position and it gives you a bit of extra cash and you can potentially, like you'd probably then need to make a trade in round. You've got Metcalf?
Yes.
Yeah. So you would have Metcalf and Harris Tavita. You've got to play one of them over each of the next 2 weeks and then hopefully you can jump up to someone in round 5 when they've both got the bye. But I think Dewey's actually by far the safer option.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with Dewey, but the fact I got Skelton, Terrell May as well.
Yeah.
I don't love having 2 players on one edge that I'm not confident in they're going to score week in, week out. But maybe that just means Skelton. Maybe Skelton can go to Tino for me and I can get Haas next week. Yeah. I don't know.
That's another option.
I don't know. It's probably is the way to go.
That's the joys of this time of year, isn't it? There's so many options. There's always so many options in SuperCoach, but you just got to work out, I think, not just where you're going to be next week and the week after, but how you time your sells, how they look like it. I mean, if you're really into it, that's where you build out sort of a graph of where you think guys will sort of peak in price or where they might peak in price and do that sort of thing. But I quite like the Dewey move. It's very safe, I'll say that, which is unlike you. Usually like to go for upside.
Yeah, well, I'm not ready to attack yet. Yep. I don't feel like it's time.
No, look, I actually think next week is a huge attacking week.
Yep.
For me personally, that's what I want to do.
Yep. I'm just happy just picking my reserves right, picking captain right. I feel like I've got the pod in Walsh already. I feel like I've already got my side that can attack.
Yep.
Just got to wait for it to happen.
Yep.
So I'm pretty happy with that.
That's fair.
All right. Tipping point. Brought to you by Picklebet. Head over to picklebet.com.au. Use the code TURBO when signing up. Putting all our tipping point people in a multi week in, week out, and we'll see if they hit because obviously they're going to be massive players throughout the week. So we've got Arthurs, Reece Walsh, Tom Starling, Jamie Humphries, and Kalen Ponga. 5 players. Maybe we do put it down to 3 later in the year. Timmy got me last week.
Yep, we're up 2-1.
So you're up 2-1. So you're on top here. We're going to put that in a multi and I'll post it on the Instagram later in the week and we'll write it together. But make sure to know what you're really gambling with. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858. Jesse Arthurs, let's start at 45 points.
Oh, that's not bad. I'm going to say overs and I'm going to say 55.
I'm going to say over and go over 60.
I am going to... I'll take unders.
Oh,
I don't want to, but I just feel like if he's that's his 1 try score, I reckon.
Yep. Reece Walsh will start at 60 points.
Yeah, I'm going to take overs and I'll take 75.
I'll take over 80.
I'll take over 82.
I'll take over 86.
I'll take unders. Damn.
Jeez, I don't like going overs all the time because I like just wanting people to flop. But
yeah, but these guys you own, so you kind of this is good for you.
Tom Starling, 45 points.
I'm going to say overs, and I'll say over 55.
Yeah, that's where I was. I'll go over 57.
I'll go over 59.
I'll go under 59. Okay. Jamie Humphries. Let's start at 35.
Yeah, I'll go overs. I'll go over 40.
I'll go under 40.
Okay.
I was going to say, can you go over 42 and I'll go under? Kalen Ponga, most popular captain this week.
You want me to start this one?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Let's say 85 points.
Yeah, I'll go overs.
Against the Titans at Seabus.
I'll go over 90.
I'll go over 95.
I'll go over 100.
I'll go under 100.
Okay.
All right, there we go. That's brought to you by Picklebet. Use the code TURBO when signing up. That lets them know you're coming from us. Captains this week.
I am going to captain Ponga. That's for sure. Too much conjecture around Turbo. Cleary's got the Storm. At this stage, I've got my VC on Terrell May, but I don't really know. I don't really actually have that many upside guys early in the weekend that I'm super excited about. The one guy that I would be excited about is Marzu, who plays in the same game as Ponga, obviously. Looking at my team, I could go Arthurs for a throw at the stumps, but if I get Haas in, I'll VC Haas.
VC Haas, I like it. I'm going VC Reece Walsh.
Yes, good call.
Which very excited for. I was on a podcast yesterday and someone bet me to captain Reece Walsh straight up, and I'm like, I'd do it. I'd happily do it, but there's no one before that I'm willing to put VC on who had high upside. So,
well, look at how my week's shaped up with you. It might not be the worst end of the world if you did do that, but I see where you come from. I would. With Ponga being such a good matchup, there's no reason to straight captain Walsh.
Tommy Turbo, a good chance of mine as well. If I get word that he's okay, he's going to play. Him against Canberra, averages 94. At 4 points, let's say he averages more.
My brother's a big Raiders fan, as you know, and that poor bugger just watches Turbo towel him up every time. They have beaten him when Turbo scored big as well.
They beat him last year.
But geez, whether they win or lose the Raiders, it's just a Turbo fest. So I don't know what it is. They actually really struggle against fullbacks in general, or let's not use this year's stats, but prior years they've struggled against fullbacks in general. They generally close down the edges reasonably well, but they struggled against Arthurs on the weekend as well. So
yeah, they did too. Lehigh, watch out. Lehigh's probably a good play this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same wing, right? It's the same spot. The
same wing, but he could play fullback as well.
Only difference is Xavier Savage is back on that side. Hopewadi was a dead set turnstile out there.
He was, but Roger scored on that wing the week before, even in a side that was pretty awful.
Yes, but I mean, it was late in the game and they were, you're right. He did score there.
I just want to make sure we've covered everything before we do go out. Pappy is in the traded in list. I wouldn't do it this week. I guess a lot of people are going to Turbo because Turbo's the fourth most traded out still at 6,500. I guess that's just people trying to create cash to make trades. So I understand it. Tom Gilbert is one I wanted to talk about just before we go. Bit disappointing. I do want to see another week, but he was turning into someone I'd be happy to hold for a couple of weeks, but with all these options, Haas and all that sort of stuff, I'm happy to move on sooner rather than later. Potentially, if he puts out another 55 this week, hopefully makes a bit of cash, but he could be a ticket to Haas or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But that's what these guys are. Like, you can't go, he's got 10 points of upside, so I've got to keep him till he makes his 100K. Like, if all your other players have more upside, and I'm not saying they all do, but if all of your players are either guns or they've got more than 10 points upside, then Gilbert actually becomes one of your better sells. I've got, in my back row, for example, I got Hopgood, Seyfarth and Gilbert. So I got plenty of guys I could sell. And now I'm hoping that Hopgood comes good. I'm going to keep him this week. But, I'm not, as much as I would happily hold Seyfarth and Hopgood, if they're my best options to trade out, you got to kiss those suckers goodbye.
Yeah, 100%. All right, thank you for coming on this week, Grant. Pleasure to have you on.
Than's for having me, mate. I'll be back soon.
Yeah, you'll be back soon. We'll see you next week. Timmy will be back next week, I assume. So we'll see you then. Mikey will be in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to his. He's obviously been overseas.
He's been doing better than me.
Overseas. Yeah, he's going really well. I just love listening to his. Mikey's always got an interesting take on pods and stuff like that, and just has a unique view of SuperCoach. So it's always good to get him in the rotation because he just offers a very different look to myself and Timmy.
100%. All right, thank you. We'll see you next week.